All right, YouTube. Hey, welcome back. Different view today. Away from the wintry wonderland. We've kind of came into spring a little bit here, it looks like. Um, but just getting a lunchtime view in. Thought we'd cover some things. Um, I guess we'll start with what you see in the left side of your picture there. The renewed calls for the hazards and threats on our public infrastructure continues to kind of like bump its way into the headlines, like the new warning from the overlords at the DHS of the threats to your water system and such. If you can see that guy right there, let's see if we get that. See that water tower there? Water storage facility. But they continue to push out warnings on this stuff, like like it's 20 years of this now, right? Like we know that there's total vulnerability of just about every public service that you can imagine. It just makes you wonder what if somebody really wanted to do something. Like, the good thing is things are so compartmentalized that the effects are limited, especially when it comes to like water and power. You really have to hit something specific to have a big impact. Even though, well, in the EMP scenario, that's separate on the power side. The electric grid EMP vulnerability is a whole different thing. But as far as a individual direct action thing, like, what could possibly happen, right? But they continue to push that. It's like just waiting for an opportunity, it seems like, so they can do some sort of, continued pushing for centralized control over a lot of this stuff, right? Which I don't know how you would do, especially water systems. Like, they're so dispersed and so localized that, which is a benefit because it makes it, it's easy to contain a lot of the threats. And, I guess your impact in a big urban area is greater because those cover a larger area. But it's funny when you get looking into how wastewater and closed systems like that work. Like, they're able to mitigate a lot of threats. It might initially have a big impact, but it can be quickly contained because it circulates and there's a purification process. Here comes a Jeeper, and so it's easy to localize. But interesting how that continues to pop in the headlines. Like, and if I don't know, maybe it happens in big cities. Maybe in big cities they go through this big security review and they actually do something. But in places like out here, water infrastructure or whatever it is, they'll put out a big warning and you never hear anything or see anything. It goes on with it because I guess we're not the ones they're talking to. But it makes all the big headlines. Interesting. So I just throw that out there since I saw the water tank there in the view. But man, what was I going to I was going to segue into something else, and I lost track of mine. I guess I ate too much lunch, and you get fat, dumb, and happy. But what else was there? Was something else. I was going to hit the push for war is continuing, but that wasn't going to be my next topic. But I'll go ahead and go into it. NATO troops going into Ukraine is almost a certainty as far as direct action. We already know that people have put different NATO troops in Ukraine by way of mercenaries or other ways, not directly uniformed. But now there's direct talk. France threatened it, and now Germany and Poland, like, everybody's ready to go in and fight Russia, right? And now the newest headline is there are Americans in Taiwan and on Taiwanese islands doing training and supporting the defensive mission, right? So that's the latest headline for World War III. And it's like, why do they put that stuff in the news? Because You figure the intel services of all the different people involved know this stuff already. They see the movements, they have on the ground intelligence, they have all the different ways to find this stuff out. So they already know. Like, why they put this out to the public and telling, getting the public riled up, because they want to condition people to get ready for a war, right? Or my bigger theory is to continue to distract and have people not be focused on the financial situation. I think it all ultimately comes down to that. The Fed came out with a new announcement today, for those that weren't paying attention. They're going to maintain interest rates at the current rate, with still planning to cut interest rates later in the year. This time last year, they were going to cut like March, April of this year. They're going to start cuts, and they keep pushing that. They keep sliding it to the right. We determined that's to the right? Pushing it down the calendars to the right. Which is interesting. The problems with banks continue. The higher these interest rates stay, the more regional banks are going to be affected and be able to not conduct operations. They can't function in that environment because of different debt loads and their different obligations and the different investments they have. In particular, mortgage-backed securities and mortgage loans and the housing market. In particular, that. And the other stuff that they loan out money for, but they're not able to get them to do enough business with these higher interest rates. So it's assumed they have to cut. All the stock market stuff is all record highs now, because everybody's waiting for that free money train as soon as they cut rates, right? Which continues to give the public the perception that the economy is fine, and people don't understand that the market is not the economy. The market is a casino. There's a gambling casino that I guess get in and get while you can, as Guns Coast to Coast would say. Make your money on the stuff while you can, because at some point the casino is going to have to take in its own, have to rake in its own, right? But that continues to mystify, I guess, most people as to how they're balancing it. They're doing the balancing act of keeping rates higher, which affects the banks and them to a certain degree themselves. But it also goes to the theory of the ultimate goal of the central bank is to make it the only bank. So it'll just eat up all these other smaller banks through the the supposed free market system of JP Morgan and these other big banks, right? So these bigger banks are going to suck up these smaller banks as it moves forward, and as they will, these banks aren't failing, they're being absorbed and bought out, is what's going to be the storyline. So it's going to be more centralized finance as it moves forward. So that's going on, and that's really what you might want to be most concerned about, because at some point you're not going to be able to play the game. It's going to be hard to keep up with the game unless you're very skilled at watching what they're doing and can get ahead of the curve like they do. Like the people, especially the people in DC, are good at doing, getting the inside information and acting on it ahead of time. Just, I guess it depends on how much you're willing to get burned. And most people are continuing to have less and less that they can gamble with. Continue to have less and less that they can just they pay the bare minimum on everything that they have. The poors, as Guns Coast to Coast would call them, us. But it's going to continue to eat away at their bottom line. It's that slow burn as we've continued to try to track, and it just continues to look like it's more and more in that direction. It's not going to be anything sharp and quick, as and as the Fed continues to try to balance that line between interest rates and free money. and exploding stock markets and everything else, with inflation, trying to keep inflation in some territory where people won't riot in the streets over it. Here we are. So I would say with all those other things going on, and we didn't even talk about the supposed election, because it is just a supposed election. This election of 2024 continues. Talk about a distraction. Like it doesn't even matter, really. Please prove to me otherwise, because all the things we just talked about are going to continue no matter who gets selected at the national level. Been lots of stuff on the Twitter with the Texas verdict on being able to detain illegal border crossers and deport, and that judgment came out. And then there's the supposed Second Amendment ruling on illegals can have weapons, and they're just trying to divide people into factions on that whole thing. That's another whole thing of trying to find a way to leverage all those decisions to give more centralized control, in my mind. But where was I going with that? Where was I going with that? But anyway, I totally lost track of my mind. I just remembered that Texas decision, and then the more recent, and the whole decision about illegals have a Second Amendment right. And there's the whole on Twitter. It's been a big deal. I didn't want to get into that in here, but there's been lots of debates on Twitter. People going back and forth, and like there's the absolutist, like it applies to everybody no matter what. You can't deny people their rights. And then there's a little more rational thought process of they're already, you can't possess a firearm in the commission of a crime, which they're already doing, for one. But then my point in the whole thing was, who here thinks that illegals aren't arming themselves regardless of whatever law says, if they want to? Granted, not all of them are. But then my second point was, if the feds aren't prosecuting illegals for anything, why would they start prosecuting them for gun possession? Like, it doesn't even make sense. Like, how that even got to be a case before somebody. It's like the feds don't want to touch that because that's their pet class right now, right? So that's a whole other issue, I guess, of the invading army and the two Chinese divisions that are located somewhere in the United States, ready to take action, and the implications there, and the idea that people that are illegal and aren't undocumented and aren't citizens are going to be on police forces and military forces. Like, we had this discussion a long time ago about on the Green Dragon, about the transition is going to happen to where they get people in the military who have no reservation about firing on Americans, and that it's almost like they're making it happen. And then now we're at that point where they are really close to making that happen. As one, they're not meeting their recruiting goals, so they're opening up the window of who can join the military, and they're going to continue on that road until they have the composition of the military and such that they will do whatever they're told. They have no reservations, no basis in American history or tradition or the limits of the military in America, and they will just do whatever they're told. And that's how you get, as Alicia was did a video on readdressing the ideas of martial law. That's how you get a force that will implement those things without any reservation, and not feeling like they have any legal bounds, because for one, they've got 3 hots and a cot and they're just doing fine. And where they came from, there are no such boundaries and limitations. So that's what they're used to, and that's what they understand. And they understand that absolute power of central authority, and to implement ideas that they like, potentially, that they agree with. So that's coming quicker than I think we thought, maybe, or we talked about it years and years ago. We just didn't know how it was going to roll out. And the way they're implementing is just like, it baffles the mind that these senior generals who, are still, I guess you'd say the oldest of the Gen X, are going along with it. And now you're going to have older millennials starting to get to that level 2 of leadership of the senior staff general level. And we know the millennial generations was pretty warped, and Gen Z is the only back to reality generation as a core. I mean, you always had fringes of each of them, but as a core, the millennials were just whacked out, and now the Gen Z's kind of balanced back to some sort of individualism and basis in rights and stuff. They have a little bit better perspective, I think, on that, and not so much nationalism, which a lot of people get turned off by. But that's where we're going. You can't. The nationalism stuff isn't going to work, as I've said for a long time. You got to get away from DC, not more of it. Anybody that's pushing for more DC is not your friend. So I guess I'll leave it with that, YouTube. Lots of stuff going on. Continue to do the things you think you need to do, but I would say watch the financial situation for continued erosion of your freedoms through financial means. They will just take your means of production away from you to where you can't produce enough to have the freedom you want. That's their short-term agenda, I think, and then long-term it'll really get into the bigger lockdown. So it is what it is. Hope you guys are having a good spring. The spring is trying to get here. I don't think I've heard any forecast of otherwise. So spring is here. We'll see how we do on our end. We'll see if we get some garden work done and stuff like that, and doing all the things right. But the financial erosion of your ability to prepare yourself and be free, I think, should be first and foremost in your mind. Whether it's your ability to work and earn an income that can do that, or to produce something on your own through a business that you provide services to somebody else, and your ability to provide that way is going to be limited as well. I mean, it's happening. It's just not happening quickly. So everybody's kind of like, it's got people in this thing of, I can just work harder. You're the mouse on the wheel, I can just work harder. I can just do more. And you really can't. You really have to. It goes back to the question that's been asked for many decades. And I asked, it was back during the beginning of the Rona, when the Wuhan came out. When is your John Galt moment? When are people going to start going Galt? We didn't even touch on the Boeing problem. Is the Boeing thing the result of people just being incompetent, or is it a going Galt issue where the people that have the talent are removing themselves from the system and they're not participating in it anymore? Questions abound, YouTube. Prep hard, live free.